The message did not come like a whisper. It came like thunder across every human colony, on every ship, in every hidden station, clinging to the dark edges of space. A single transmission cut through. It was not scrambled, not hidden, not encrypted. It forced itself onto every screen and every radio band. A face appeared first. Not human. Its skin was pale and ridged with bone-like armor. Its eyes black pools that reflected no light. Behind the creature burned a flag of red and gold, alive with symbols no one understood. Yet when the mouth of the alien opened, the words came in perfect clarity, spoken in the one language the galaxy had learned to fear, the human tongue. Submit or burn. That was the message. No plea, no chance for peace, no offer of negotiation. Just those 3 words, the transmission repeated, again, and with each repetition, another human colony vanished into static. Ships that tried to reply screamed once, then were swallowed by silence. The voice returned, calm, certain, unstoppable. Submit or burn. On Earth, the skies above the capital cities filled with panic. Governments rushed to gather their councils. News feeds ran the message uncut. Families huddled together, whispering questions no leader dared to answer. Who were they? Why now? Could humanity fight back? In orbit above Mars, inside the fortress known as Titan Command, the highest leaders of the United Terran Defense convened. Admirals, generals, and scientists gathered around a single table of glass and steel, their faces gray with fear. The room vibrated with arguments, shouts, and disbelief. They have destroyed 6 colonies in 3 hours, a commander snapped, slamming his hand against the table. Entire cities erased. They demand surrender because they know we cannot resist. They underestimate us, another argued, though his voice lacked conviction. We are not defenseless. Not defenseless? The first roared. Have you seen the scans? Their ships are 10 times the size of ours. Their weapons tear through shields like paper. Defenseless is exactly what we are. The room broke into chaos again. The sound of raised voices drowned out reason, each leader desperate to be heard. Some called for surrender. Some demanded a counterattack. Some simply begged for time. In the corner, Admiral John Hale watched silently. His eyes, sharp and cold, did not waver from the holoscreen where the alien face repeated its demand. Hale was not a man who frightened easily. He had commanded fleets during the orbital riots, had faced pirates on the edge of the Kuiper Belt, had lost ships and crews in the silence of the void. But this was different. This was not war as humanity knew it. This was extermination, announced with confidence, carried out with fire. Finally he stood. The room fell silent. "You are all asking the wrong question," Hale said. His voice carried the weight of iron. "The question is not whether we should fight. The question is whether we have any choice at all." No one answered. The only sound was the alien voice on the loop. "Submit or burn." Hale leaned forward, his hands pressed flat against the table. "You all saw what they did. They do not want peace. They do not want resources. They do not want slaves. They want us erased. So I will tell you the truth none of you want to say out loud. They have already declared war. The only choice left is whether humanity dies on its knees or fights on its feet." His words hung in the air like a blade. For a moment, the leaders stared at him, weighing his conviction against their fear. And then the room broke again, but this time the voices were different, louder, harder, united in anger. Across the colonies, that same anger spread. People who had been frozen in shock now clenched their fists. Families who had whispered of surrender now spoke of vengeance. The aliens had sent their demand to break humanity's will. Instead, they had lit a fire, but fire alone could not win a war. In the blackness beyond Neptune, a lone freighter drifted. Its hull was scorched, its engines crippled. Inside, survivors huddled together, shivering in the cold. They had seen the alien fleet firsthand. They had watched their escort ships torn apart in seconds. They had seen worlds burn. A flicker of light passed over their shattered windows. Engines, massive engines. A warship emerged from the dark, its hull painted black, its weapons charged. Not alien, human. The survivors cried out in hope, but the warship did not slow to rescue them. Instead, it turned its cannons outward and fired, not at the broken freighter, but at the stars. A beam of pure light tore into space, carrying a message of its own. It was not words. It was not a surrender. It was fury. That first shot destroyed the alien relay hidden beyond the system. It told the invaders one thing only. Humanity was not running. Back on Earth, the alien message played once more, but now it met a different audience. Soldiers armed themselves. Engineers raced to awaken machines long hidden. Scientists whispered about weapons sealed away since the last great wars. Humanity had been caught unprepared, but not unarmed. In the quiet of his command chamber, Admiral Hale stood before the holoscreen, staring at the alien's unblinking eyes. His reflection stared back at him, worn and scarred. "You think we will submit," he said softly, though no one was there to hear. "But you have just made your first mistake." The alien face spoke again. "Submit or burn." Hale's voice was low, steady, filled with promise. "Then burn." Hours later, news spread of another colony's destruction. Millions gone in a single strike. But instead of terror, fury now filled the streets of Earth. People painted slogans across walls and banners, "Never again." "Fight for Earth, no surrender." Recruitment centers overflowed. Men and women who had never held a weapon before begged for a chance to fight. Old veterans who thought they had seen their last battle returned, their eyes burning with purpose. Humanity, fractured for decades by politics and greed, found itself united under one truth. They were at war. The Zorith, as the invaders called themselves, believed they had given humanity no choice. They thought the demand would break the will of Earth, but they did not understand humans. They did not understand what happened when an enemy threatened not just land, but family, home, survival. On the edge of the solar system, fleets that had never been tested gathered. Their ships were smaller, their weapons weaker, their numbers fewer. But inside those ships burned something no alien could measure. Rage. The first council broadcast to the people came that night. Admiral Hale stood before billions. His uniform was plain, his voice calm, but his words cut through like steel. They believe we will bow. They believe they can erase us. But humanity has never bowed. Not to tyrants, not to empires, not to extinction. They demanded our submission. Instead, we will give them our fury. And we will show the stars what it means to fight humanity. The broadcast ended, and silence filled the night. Then cheers erupted across Earth, and every colony still standing. The fire that had begun in fear now burned in every human heart. The Zorith thought the demand was the beginning of the end. They were wrong. It was only the beginning. The stars burned red with fire. A freighter spun helplessly through the void, its hull torn open, its engines dead. Inside, survivors huddled against broken walls, their breath fogging in the cold air. They were miners, traders, children, ordinary people caught in the storm of war. Their escort ships had been ripped apart in minutes, torn into glowing fragments by weapons too fast to track. The survivors had seen entire cities burn on the colonies below. Now they waited, listening to the silence, wondering when death would finally find them. It came in the form of light. The dark ahead split wide as a fleet emerged. Not human, alien. The Zorith ships stretched like blades of black glass, their spines lit with crimson fire. They moved without sound, without hesitation, closing in on the crippled freighter. The survivors froze, their hope collapsing. They had already seen what came next. One of the Zorith ships angled forward, preparing to finish the freighter. Its cannons glowed, charging for the final strike. Children cried. Men and women whispered their last prayers. Then the void trembled. A shadow rose behind the alien ships, vast and sharp, hidden until this very moment. Engines roared, blue fire pouring from its thrusters. A human warship. Its hull black, its weapons alive. It had been waiting, watching. Now it struck. The first shot split space. A lance of white fire cut across the darkness and slammed into the lead Zorith vessel. Shields shattered. Armor screamed as metal tore open. The alien ship burst into a storm of light, fragments spinning into the void. For the first time, the survivors saw it, an alien ship destroyed. Not invincible, not eternal, breakable. The human warship did not stop. Its guns turned again, ripping another Zorith cruiser apart in seconds. The survivors on the freighter cried out, not in fear, but in awe. Humanity had not bowed. Humanity had answered. The battle was chaos. Alien ships spun to respond, their crimson cannons blazing. The human vessel darted between them, smaller, faster, every shot precise. Shields sparked, hulls groaned, explosions painted the void. In minutes, the impossible happened. The Zorith fleet broke formation. They fled. The freighter survivors wept as the last alien ships vanished into the dark. They thought the warship would come for them, that it would rescue them. But the human vessel did not slow. Instead, it turned its weapons toward the black void beyond and fired again, this time at an unseen relay hidden in the shadows. The explosion was silent, but its meaning thundered across the stars. The Zorith had been watching. The humans had just sent them a message. We are not prey. News of the battle traveled faster than light. Across Earth and the colonies, the story spread. A single human warship had stood against a fleet and lived. It had struck back, destroyed, survived. For the first time since the alien demand, people cheered instead of wept. On Earth's streets, crowds filled the squares, holding banners high. Fight back. No surrender. Fury. The governments that once argued over fear now saw no choice. Factories roared to life. Shipyards lit their furnaces. Weapons once hidden in vaults were dragged into the light. Humanity was not ready for war, but humanity would not die quietly. Inside Titan Command, Admiral John Hale listened to the reports with cold focus. His officers were alive with energy, voices sharp with victory. We proved they can bleed, one captain said. The colonies will rally now, another added. This is the moment. We must strike again. Hale raised a hand, and the room fell silent. His eyes burned, but his voice was steel. One battle is not a war. Do not mistake survival for victory. The Zorith did not retreat out of fear. They retreated to learn, and now they will come again, harder, stronger. We cannot celebrate. We must prepare. The officers lowered their heads, but inside they understood. The first blow had been struck. The real war had only begun. The alien response far across the stars, in the Zorith throne world, the Council of War gathered. Their chambers glowed with molten fire, their voices a chorus of rage. The humans had resisted. Worse, the humans had killed. They dare to strike us, one commander hissed, his bone armor rattling with fury. They are primitive, weak. They should not be capable of such defiance. They will pay. Their worlds will burn until nothing remains. At the head of the chamber, the High Marshal rose. Taller than the rest, his body scarred with victories across 100 wars, his voice silenced the chamber in a single command. They have revealed their true nature. We knew they were dangerous. Now it is proven. This is not conquest. This is extermination. Gather the fleets. Let no world stand, the Zorith Council roared in agreement. Orders spread. Armadas began to move. Humanity's strike had not frightened the Empire. It had enraged it. Back in the Sol system, humanity moved faster than it ever had. Shipyards produced warships day and night. Colonists offered their lives as soldiers. Engineers pushed beyond safety, building weapons untested and unstable. Everywhere, one word burned: fury. But fury came with cost. Families were torn apart as loved ones left for war. Cities rationed food and power to feed the fleet. Fear still lived beneath the fire. People whispered in the dark, what if the first victory was only luck? What if the next strike would erase them all? Admiral Hale knew those whispers. He heard them in every meeting, every report, every broadcast. He knew the truth. Humanity was not ready, but there was no choice. He stood before the war map, red lights marking every colony already destroyed. The Zorith spread like fire across the stars. If humanity did not strike soon, there would be nothing left to defend. Hale turned to his captains. His voice was low but sharp. We will not wait. We will not hide. We will carry the war to them. They demanded our submission. We will give them fire. The order spread. The first fleet gathered at Titan Station, its ships black against the red glare of Saturn. They were smaller than the Zorith cruisers, fewer, weaker, but each ship carried men and women who no longer feared death. Pilots strapped into cockpits, their hands trembling but steady. Marines loaded rifles, their faces grim. Captains walked their decks, whispering promises to the crews who trusted them with their lives. The fleet engines roared to life. The void trembled. For the first time in history, humanity was not sending ships to defend its worlds. Humanity was sending ships to strike. Their target was a forward base on the edge of Zorith territory. Intelligence reported it was lightly guarded, only a supply depot for the larger fleets. But Hale knew better. There was no safety in this war. Every target carried risk. The fleet jumped. The stars bent, and the void split. When the ships emerged, fire was waiting. Zorith cruisers spun into formation, their weapons already alive. The humans had been expected. Traps snapped shut, cannons roared, shields screamed under the assault. Ships exploded in silence, their crews vanishing into dust. But the humans did not break. They pushed forward, guns blazing, fury alive in every shot. Smaller, faster, sharper. Human warships darted between alien cruisers, cutting them apart piece by piece. Fighters swarmed, missiles screamed, hulls tore open. At the center, Hale's flagship drove straight for the alien station. Its cannons lit the void, hammering the enemy with relentless fire. The Zorith fought with precision, with discipline, with numbers. But the humans fought with something the aliens did not understand. Rage. One by one, the Zorith ships fell. The station burned, and when the smoke cleared, the impossible had happened again. The humans still stood. The battle was over, but the war had only grown. As the fleet limped home, damaged but alive, Hale sent a single transmission across the stars. It carried no plea, no surrender, only one sentence. You asked for war. This is our answer, the message spread. Across Earth, cheers rose. Across alien worlds, whispers spread. For the first time, the galaxy saw that the humans did not break. They did not kneel. They fought, and the Zorith, watching from their throne world, understood the truth. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was fire. The first blow had been struck. The war of fury had begun. The broadcast began with silence. Then the image cut in, a battlefield in space, raw and unfiltered. Viewers across Earth and the colonies saw ships burning, wreckage drifting, bodies frozen in the void. No music, no voice, only the truth. The camera shook as the human warship pressed forward, its cannons firing. Alien cruisers filled the screen, their red beams tearing the black sky. The feed came from a combat drone, streaming live to billions. Humanity had demanded proof of its strength, and now it was given. Titan fleet has engaged the Zorith, the announcer said, his voice hard. This is not training. This is not propaganda. This is war. The world held its breath. Children clutched their parents. Soldiers leaned forward in silence. Old veterans whispered prayers. For the first time, every human eye saw their fleets collide with the enemy in real time. The first volley struck. Human warships darted between the hulking Zorith cruisers, firing everything they had. Explosions tore across the dark, lighting the void in fire. Cheers erupted on Earth. For a moment it felt like victory. But then the feed shifted. A human frigate was split in two by a single alien beam. Another vanished in a storm of missiles. The drone's camera caught the screams, cut off as oxygen escaped into space. Gasps filled homes across the colonies. Mothers cried out. Fathers clenched fists. This was not a story of easy triumph. This was survival, bought with blood. Admiral John Hale stood on the bridge of his flagship, Titan's Wrath, eyes fixed on the holoscreen. Alien cruisers pressed hard, their weapons slamming against human shields. His fleet was outnumbered, outgunned, and every decision carried the weight of thousands of lives. Shields failing on the Aegis, an officer shouted. "Tell her captain to hold," Hale snapped. "She cannot last another volley. Then she will ram," the order carried across space. The Aegis, her shields gone, engines burning, turned directly toward the largest Zorith vessel. The alien ship fired again, ripping holes across her hull. Flames burst inside, crew screaming, but still she drove forward. Impact in 10 seconds, a voice crackled over comms. Hale stood silent, watching, waiting. The Aegis slammed into the alien cruiser head-on. Both ships erupted in a wave of fire, fragments scattering into the void. The feed cut to static, then returned to show nothing but wreckage. The humans watching the broadcast roared with fury and grief. 1,000 lives had just been lost. But with their sacrifice, the alien cruiser was gone. Admiral Hale turned back to his officers. Push forward. Every loss buys us ground. Every ship buys us time. The humans obeyed. The drone feed continued, showing human fighters swarming like hornets, diving between alien cannons, striking again and again. Frigates weaved through burning wreckage, unleashing missiles into the enemy ranks. Destroyers hammered the Zorith shields until they cracked. The aliens were powerful, but they were rigid. They fought with formation, with control. Humanity fought with chaos, with desperation, with rage. A single pilot, her voice carried across comms, screamed as she took down 3 alien interceptors before her fighter burst into flames. Her final words cut through static. For Earth. Billions heard her cry. Billions answered with one voice. For Earth. The feed spread across every human colony. The battle became more than a fight. It became a symbol. Humanity would not die quietly. Hours passed. The void filled with burning wreckage. Both sides bled, but the tide shifted. Alien cruisers broke formation, retreating under relentless human fire. One after another they fell back, and then the impossible happened. The remaining Zorith ships fled. Silence filled the broadcast. The camera showed the battlefield. Wreckage, burning hulls, frozen bodies, but no more alien fire. Humanity had stood against the storm and survived. The announcer's voice cracked as he spoke. The Zorith are retreating. The First Fleet holds. Humanity has its first true victory. Across Earth, cheers shook the cities. Crowds poured into the streets. Bells rang, flags rose, voices screamed until throats bled. For the first time, hope burned brighter than fear, but not everyone cheered. On Titan's wrath, Admiral Hale stood silent. Around him, his officers smiled, shouted, embraced. He did not. His eyes stayed on the wreckage drifting outside. Hundreds of ships gone, tens of thousands of lives lost. This was not victory. This was survival at a cost humanity could not pay forever. Still, he whispered, we live. And if we live, we fight. The celebrations across Earth lasted 3 days. Songs were written, statues planned, speeches given. Children repeated the names of heroes who had fallen. Humanity tasted hope for the first time since the demand had been given. But Admiral Hale's reports told another story. Half the fleet destroyed, ammunition nearly spent, fuel reserves dangerously low. Every victory bought with blood. In his private chamber, Hale studied the reports in silence. His second-in-command, Captain Rena Morgan, entered quietly. They celebrate as if the war is won, she said. Let them, Hale replied. They need hope more than truth. And you? I need fury, because fury is all that will keep us alive, Rena nodded. She had seen the same numbers. Humanity had won a battle, but the Zorith still controlled the stars. And they would come again. Far away, in the throne world of the Zorith, the High Marshal watched recordings of the battle. His eyes narrowed, his voice a low hiss. They are reckless. They throw lives away like fire, and yet they endure. One commander growled, they are nothing. One battle means nothing. We will crush them. The High Marshal's voice silenced the chamber. No, do not mistake them for nothing. They are dangerous, more dangerous than we believed. They fight like beasts, but beasts with fire in their blood. If we do not end them quickly, they will grow stronger. The council agreed. Orders spread. Larger fleets began to gather. Humanity had drawn blood, but the Zorith would answer with war on a scale the galaxy had never seen. Back on Earth, Admiral Hale delivered his message to the people. He stood before billions, his face scarred by fire and shadow. His words were simple, his voice sharp. We stood against them, and we did not fall. We lost brothers, we lost sisters, But we are still here, and as long as humanity draws breath, we will fight. They asked for war. We will give them fury. The roar that followed shook the planet. From the colonies to the farthest outposts, humans shouted as one. The fear that once bound them was gone. The demand had lit a fire. The first blow had struck. Now the fury had ignited. The broadcast ended with a single image. A wrecked human ship, broken in half, still drifting through the void. Its engines were gone, its crew lost, but its flag still clung to the shattered hull, torn but unburned. That image spread across every human screen. It became a symbol, not of death, but of defiance. The war was far from over. The price would be heavy, but one truth now burned into the galaxy. Humanity would not bow. Humanity would not break. Humanity would fight until the stars themselves burned out. The silence before the storm broke with a scream of steel across the stars. Humanity's fleet surged from the dark. Shields blazing, weapons hot, engines burning like fire in the void. For hours, the ships had drifted in silence, hiding their approach behind shattered asteroids and fractured moons. Now they moved as one. It was no longer defense. It was war. The Zorath Armada had expected hesitation. They believed the humans would cower or attempt to negotiate. Instead, the human fleet cut into them like a blade through flesh. Captain Sarah Vance stood at the command platform of the battleship Resolute. Her eyes locked on the battle display. Red markers swarmed across the screen, enemy destroyers rushing to intercept. Blue markers, human warships, moved in tight formation, their advance direct, merciless. They are scrambling, her tactical officer said. His voice shook as he tracked the incoming swarms. They did not expect this speed. Good, Sarah answered, her voice sharp. Shock is our weapon. We strike before they can breathe, the first salvo roared out. Torpedoes and energy lances shot through the dark, streaking across space. Explosions lit the void, tearing apart the front line of Zorath fighters. Shattered wings and burning wrecks spun away, vanishing into black. The Zorath responded, howling with fury. Their destroyers fired plasma storms, rivers of burning light that turned space into a boiling sea. Human shields rippled, groaned, and some broke under the sheer force. A corvette near the Resolute vanished in flame. But the humans did not break. Admiral Kepler's voice thundered across the fleet channel. Forward, no mercy. They asked for war, give them their answer. The words became fire in every heart. The humans pushed harder, driving into the storm. The clash was chaos, pure and terrible. Fighters swarmed like insects, weaving through explosions, hunting each other in deadly spirals. Battleships bled light, hulls cracking under the pressure of plasma fire. Yet still the humans advanced. On the bridge of the Zorath flagship, the warlord Charnak watched in disbelief. His jaws flexed with rage, claws digging into the command chair. They fight like mad beasts, one of his lieutenants growled. Mad? Charnak hissed, his eyes burning with cold fury. No, this is not madness. This is something else. They fight as if every ship carries the weight of an entire world. Another officer shouted, Warlord, their flagship presses straight for us. They are not turning aside. Charnak rose, towering over his crew. His armored plates shifted as he spoke with venom. Then let them come. We will drown them in fire. On the Resolute, alarms screamed. The ship trembled under the hammer of enemy fire. Crew ran between consoles, sealing breaches, rerouting power, shouting to be heard over the chaos. Forward shields are at 30%. Port weapons down! Another wave incoming! Captain Vance gripped the rail, her knuckles white. Hold the line! Keep our nose pointed at their flagship. That is our target. The tactical officer looked at her with wide eyes. Their flagship. That's suicide! Not if we cut off the head, she said. Her voice carried no doubt. The beast dies when the head is severed. Outside, the Resolute drove like a spear toward the heart of the Zorath Armada. Every cannon thundered, every missile streaked bright against the dark. Escorts followed, shielding the battleship with their own hulls, willing to die if it meant clearing her path. The first clash became slaughter. The Zorath fought with fury, their weapons burning holes through human lines. But the humans refused to retreat. For every ship lost, too pressed forward. For every scream in the comms, another answered with fire. The void was painted with light. Red, blue, gold, bursts of destruction that turned the emptiness into a storm of color. Charnak bared his fangs as his screens filled with wreckage. How do they not falter? An advisor trembled. Warlord, they do not fear death. No, Charnak whispered, watching the human fleet carve deeper into his formation. They crave it if it buys them victory. The Resolute shuddered as another plasma storm tore across her hull. Fires burned in her corridors, air vented into space, crews struggled to hold her together, but still she pressed on. Captain Vance stood tall, her voice rising above the chaos. Target their flagship! All batteries, fire! The ship's cannons unleashed a storm. Energy bolts, rail slugs, and missile barrages screamed across the void, hammering into the Zorath command ship. Its shields flared, then buckled. Chunks of armor tore free, spinning away in the dark. Charnak roared in fury. Focus fire! Break them apart! Do not let that ship through! His fleet obeyed. Plasma and ion storms rained down, smashing into the Resolute. The battleship buckled, hull, plating cracking, lights flickering, but the humans did not stop. One by one, their ships sacrificed themselves, throwing their bulk into enemy fire to shield the Resolute. Destroyers burned, cruisers split apart, yet the path stayed clear. Sarah's voice thundered. Drive us through! One strike and the monster falls. The clash reached its breaking point. The Resolute charged headlong, burning, broken but unyielding. The Zorath flagship loomed ahead, wounded but still powerful. Inside, Charnak snarled. They mean to ram us. His crew stared, disbelief and fear mixing in their eyes. That is madness! No, Charnak whispered, his claws tightening on the rail. That is fury. The two giants closed the distance. Weapons fired without pause, tearing pieces from each other. Explosions cascaded, fire consuming the void. Then, in the blinding storm of destruction, the Resolute broke through the final wall of Zorath ships and aimed her battered hull directly at the enemy flagship. The silence on both sides was deafening. For a heartbeat, even the storm of war seemed to pause. Every soldier, human and alien, held their breath as the two titans faced each other in the dark. Captain Vance stood unshaken, her voice calm. All power to forward cannons! Fire everything, the crew obeyed. Every weapon left in the Resolute roared at once. Missiles streaked, lances burned, railguns shattered the night. They slammed into the Zorath flagship like a hammer striking glass. Shields collapsed, armor split. Explosions ripped across its surface. The warlord Charnak roared in defiance as fire consumed his command deck. His last words echoed like a curse. This is not the end. Humanity will drown. Then the flagship tore apart in a chain of fire, splitting in two, consumed by its own reactor, the void lit with blinding brilliance. The Zorath command vessel was gone. Silence fell across the battlefield. Their fleet faltered, leaderless, broken. The humans, though battered and bloodied, raised their voices in a single cry. It thundered across the comms, across the wreckage, across the stars. For Earth, for humanity! But Captain Vance did not celebrate. She looked at the burning wreckage drifting in the dark, her chest tight. The first clash was won, yet she knew the truth. This was only the beginning. The Zorath would not forgive. They would return stronger, angrier, more determined. And when they came, the fury of mankind would be tested again. Captain Vance whispered under her breath, words no one else could hear. You asked for war. You will choke on it. The first Zorath fleet died in fire, but their scream carried across the stars. Every surviving human ship heard it in the silence that followed. The wreckage of the Zorath flagship still burned, casting strange shadows in the dark void. For a moment there was relief. Humanity had survived the first clash. They had even won, but the quiet that followed was heavy, full of dread. Captain Sarah Vance stood on the bridge of the Resolute. Her ship was broken, hull torn, decks flooded with smoke, entire sections gone. Yet the Resolute still lived, her crew still breathed, and their eyes never looked down in fear. Sarah's voice carried through the smoke and chaos. This battle is over, but the war has just begun. The survivors gathered in orbit around a fractured moon. There the remnants of Earth's fleet floated like ghosts, scarred, limping, bleeding light into the void. Admiral Kepler's voice came across the comm. It was rough, worn, but strong. We struck the first blow. Do not think the Zorath will stop here. Their kind does not retreat forever. They will come again. And when they do, they will come in numbers no one has ever seen. Silence followed his words. No one argued. Everyone knew he was right. Kepler looked into the hollow display of his remaining captains. Sarah Vance was among them, her face blackened with soot, her uniform torn. Yet her eyes still burned. Kepler spoke again. This war is no longer about survival. It is about fury. They demanded conflict, and we answered. Now we must carry that fury to every battlefield, every corner of space. If they seek to drown us, we will burn their oceans dry. The captains answered as one. For humanity! Far away, in the throne chamber of the Zorath War Council, the news of Charnak's death spread like fire. The chamber shook with the roars of alien leaders, their armored hides glinting in the dim light. A massive figure stood above them all, his crest marked with scars. Warlord Koresh, brother of Charnak, raised his clawed hand and silenced the chamber. His eyes glowed with wrath. My brother is dead, slain by humans. They dared to tear our flagship apart. They dared to defy the Zorath. Now they will know what true war is. The council bellowed their approval. Drums of war thundered. Armies began to rise. Fleets multiplied in the docks of their homeworlds. The Zorath would answer not with one fleet, but with many, and they would not stop until Earth itself was ash. On Earth, the news of victory spread fast. Across the cities, people cheered. Screens lit up with images of the destroyed Zorath flagship, burning as proof that humanity was no longer prey. Children pointed at the stars with wide eyes. Strangers embraced. Soldiers cried with pride. But inside the halls of government, the celebration was short. Leaders gathered in the war chamber beneath the United Nations compound, listening to Admiral Kepler's grim report. He told them the truth. Victory had cost them too much. Half the fleet was gone. Supplies were dwindling. And worse, the Zorath would never forgive. They would return with overwhelming strength. One leader spoke in fear. We cannot fight them forever. They will bury us under their numbers. But another slammed his fist on the table. Then let them come. Humanity does not kneel, not now, not ever. The chamber divided between fear and fury. But one thing was certain. The war was no longer a distant threat. It was here. It was now. And every soul on Earth would be called to fight. The Resolute limped into orbit above Earth weeks later. The ship looked like a wounded beast, armor torn, engines coughing fire. Yet when it appeared, people on the ground cheered. Sarah Vance stood at the viewport, watching her homeworld spin below. Blue oceans, green fields, cities glittering with light. All of it fragile. All of it worth protecting. Her first officer stepped beside her. His voice was quiet. Captain, the crew is exhausted. Many want to see their families. Many want to rest. Sarah nodded. She wanted the same, but she knew the truth. We will give them rest, but only a little. Then we prepare for what comes next. The Zorath will not stop, and neither will we. In the training grounds below, recruits flooded in by the thousands. Farmers, engineers, students, doctors, ordinary people who chose to fight. They carried no fear in their eyes, only determination. The first victory had lit something inside them. Humanity had been hunted for too long. Now at last, they would become the hunters. Factories roared to life. New warships began to rise from Earth's shipyards, faster, stronger, more advanced. Scientists worked without sleep, tearing apart captured Zorath wreckage to learn its secrets. Every scrap of alien metal became a new weapon. Humanity was no longer preparing for survival. They were preparing for vengeance, but vengeance has a cost. Sarah sat in the quiet of her quarters, reading the names of the dead. Page after page of crew who had given their lives to keep the Resolute alive. She closed her eyes, her chest heavy. She had led them into fire, and many had not returned. Her comms screen lit up. Admiral Kepler appeared, his face drawn. Captain Vance, the Council has made its choice. We are no longer fighting one battle at a time. We are launching a full campaign. Sarah's eyes sharpened. A campaign? Yes, Kepler said. We will strike first, before their full armada arrives. We will take the war to their colonies, their strongholds, their supply lines. Every strike will weaken them. Every strike will remind them that humanity does not break. Sarah's jaw tightened. It will be costly. Kepler's voice hardened. War is always costly, but this time it is their turn to pay. Meanwhile, deep in Zorath space, Warlord Koresh stood before his gathered legions. His voice thundered like fire across stone. Humans think they can fight us as equals. They think their fragile ships and weak bodies can stand against the Zorath. They are wrong. We will show them the price of defiance. We will show them the weight of true fury. The legions roared. Millions of soldiers marched. War drums shook the very air. Koresh raised his blade to the sky. Oh, we do not seek their surrender. We seek their extinction. Back on Earth, preparations moved faster than ever. The new fleet was not as large as what humanity had lost, but it was sharper, built from pain and anger. The Resolute was repaired, scarred but stronger. Other ships rose beside her, fresh from the docks, painted with names meant to inspire: defiance, wrath, justice, vengeance. Sarah walked the decks of her ship, feeling the hum of its repaired engines. Her crew moved with silent determination, their eyes harder now, their steps faster. The first clash had burned away all hesitation. What remained was iron. The fury of humanity spread like wildfire. Colonies across the system answered the call. Asteroid miners turned their drills into weapons. Scientists converted civilian stations into fortresses. Even the outer colonies, far from Earth, pledged their fleets. Humanity had never been united like this before. But far away, beyond the reach of human eyes, the Zorath Armada grew. Bigger, darker, deadlier, like a storm rising on the edge of the horizon. The clash that had begun with one demand was no longer a single battle. It had become a fire that spread across the stars. On the bridge of the Resolute, Sarah stared into the void. She could almost feel it, waves of fury building on both sides, ready to collide. Her first officer asked, "Do you think we can win?" Sarah did not look at him. Her gaze stayed fixed on the stars, her voice steady. "I don't know if we can win, but I know this. We will never kneel. Not to them, not to anyone." Her words carried across the crew, quiet but sharp as steel. Every soldier who heard them straightened their back, tightened their grip on their station, and prepared for what was coming. The fury was spreading. And soon, the galaxy itself would burn. The first flames fell without warning. Over the colony world of Helios, the sky split open as the Zorath fleet descended. Their warships poured through the atmosphere like burning meteors, engines howling, weapons alive with deadly light. The people below screamed as fire rained from above. Cities turned to ash in moments. Forests lit up like torches. Helios had been a proud outpost of humanity, a garden world full of life. In less than an hour, it became a battlefield. Captain Sarah Vance watched the disaster unfold from the Resolute, her jaw tight, her hands clenched. The Zorath had struck fast, bypassing Earth's defenses, going straight for the colonies. Her first officer shouted over the alarms. "Incoming fleet bearing 72 by 15. Dozens of capital ships, hundreds of escorts. They're tearing the colony apart." Sarah's eyes burned with fury. "Then we tear into them." The Resolute and her escorts roared into the burning skies of Helios. Human ships streaked through smoke and fire, their engines cutting through the chaos. The Zorath fleet turned to meet them, weapons blazing. The first clash shook the heavens. Torpedoes lit the clouds. Energy lances carved through smoke. Explosions rolled across the sky, so bright they burned shadows into the ground below. Sarah gripped the railing, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Target their landing craft! Do not let them touch the ground." Her tactical officer worked frantically, directing fire. Human ships strafed the Zorath transports, shredding them in mid-air. Burning wrecks fell like meteors, crashing into the forests, sending shockwaves through the ground, but hundreds more slipped past, vomiting soldiers onto the surface. On the ground, the battle became even more brutal. Zorath shock troops, Towering beasts of armored flesh poured from their dropships. Their claws ripped through steel. Their plasma rifles cut humans down in rivers of fire. The defenders of Helios, militia, colonists, soldiers, fought back with everything they had. From the windows of burning homes, humans fired rifles. From the shadows of ruined streets, they set ambushes. Farmers grabbed tools and turned them into weapons. Even children carried messages between the lines, refusing to run. Every human knew there was no escape. There was only resistance. Above, the sky burned with fury. Admiral Kepler's voice thundered across the fleet comms. "Hold them! If Helios falls, every colony after it is next. Buy time, bleed them, break them if you can." The humans obeyed, even as their ships cracked under fire. Cruisers exploded in the clouds, raining fragments onto the ground below. Fighters spiraled down in burning trails. Yet for every ship lost, another surged forward, ramming into Zorath vessels, detonating in blinding sacrifice. Sarah's eyes narrowed as she saw the colony's great city burning below. Tens of thousands still fought in the streets, refusing to surrender. She spoke through clenched teeth. "If the Zorath want this world, they will pay for it in blood." Warlord Koresh himself commanded the assault from orbit. His flagship loomed above Helios like a mountain of steel, its cannons pounding the defenders without pause. He watched the chaos with cold satisfaction. His advisor bowed. "The humans resist fiercely, Warlord. They fight like cornered beasts." Koresh's lips pulled back in a jagged grin. "Good, let them fight. The more they resist, the sweeter their destruction will be." The advisor hesitated. "But their fleet does not break. They drive into us without fear." Koresh's grin faded. His claws clenched. "Then we will show them why no race survives against the Zorath." He raised his hand, and his flagship supercannon charged. A beam of pure destruction lanced downward, striking the colony's largest city. Towers crumbled in an instant. The ground split apart, molten fire consuming everything. On the Resolute, the crew watched in horror. Entire districts vanished in seconds. Sarah's voice broke into a snarl. "That ship dies. I don't care the cost. That ship dies now." The battle turned desperate. The Resolute led a strike group straight toward Koresh's flagship. Plasma fire hammered them from all sides, tearing ships apart, but still they charged, shields collapsing. "Engines hit! We're not going to make it." Sarah stood tall, her voice steady as steel. "We make it. Humanity makes it. Forward!" Human destroyers threw themselves into the fire, blocking the flagship's cannons with their own bodies. Fragments of burning hull spun through the skies. Cruisers locked their trajectories into rams, tearing chunks out of the Zorath Colossus. The Resolute broke through, her cannons blazing. Every weapon fired at once, slamming into the flagship's armored hide. Explosions tore across its surface, but the beast still lived. Koresh bellowed with rage. "They dare touch my ship? Burn them all!" The flagship's guns answered, hammering the Resolute again and again. Decks cracked. Fires spread. Dozens of crew were thrown into the void. But Sarah did not flinch. "Keep firing," she shouted. "As long as we breathe, we strike." Below, the ground war grew even more savage. Human soldiers fought street by street, house by house, refusing to yield. Zorath shock troops smashed into them, but still they held. In one ruined square, a band of colonists trapped a Zorath war beast under rubble, then set it ablaze with fuel. In another, a wounded human soldier detonated a pack of explosives beneath an enemy walker, bringing it crashing down in a fiery heap. The people of Helios fought not to win, but to make every inch of ground cost the Zorath dearly. At the height of the chaos, a desperate message came through the comms to Sarah's ship. It was from the ground commander of Helios. His voice was broken but clear. "Captain Vance, the city is gone. Most of our defenses are broken, but we will not surrender. Use us, use our reactors. Strike the flagship." "And this," Sarah's eyes widened. "You'll die." The voice answered without hesitation. "We will die anyway. Better our deaths light the sky than vanish in silence." The channel cut. On her screen, the colony's surviving power stations began to overload, their reactors spiking toward critical. The ground defenders had turned their own city into a weapon. Sarah's voice was low but fierce. "All ships pull back. Let them strike." On the surface, the last humans of Helios raised their weapons one final time. The Zorath charged, unaware of what was coming. Then the city erupted. The reactors tore themselves apart in a chain of fire so massive it split the skies. The blast ripped through Zorath troops, leveling everything for miles. The shockwaves surged upward, slamming into Koresh's flagship. The supership reeled, armor shattered, weapons silenced. Flames consumed half its hull. On the Resolute, the crew erupted in cheers, but Sarah did not smile. Her heart ached for the colony that had chosen fire over surrender. Still, her voice rang with iron. "Helios stands, even in death." Let the galaxy remember that, but Koresh survived. His flagship burned, his army shattered, yet his fury only grew. From the wreckage of his command deck, he roared into the comms. "Humans, you think this is victory? You think fire will save you? No, you have only fed the storm. I will scour your worlds until nothing remains but ash." His words carried across the stars, a promise of endless war. On Earth, his threat echoed through every channel. The people heard it, and instead of fear, something else grew. Fury. Sarah Vance stood on the scarred bridge of the Resolute, her body trembling from exhaustion, her ship held together by willpower alone. She looked out at the burning remains of Helios, at the wreckage of human and Zorath ships alike, drifting through the sky. Her voice was quiet, but sharp as a blade. "They think they can burn us into submission. They are wrong. Every fire they light will only make us burn hotter. This war is not ending. It is only beginning." Her crew, battered but alive, straightened their backs. Their voices rose together, strong, unyielding, "For humanity!" The cry carried through the ship, into the fleet, across the void. A single voice of defiance in a galaxy set on fire, and far beyond the fury spread. The battlefield shook like a living thing. The alien fleet had thrown everything it had into the skies above Earth, and for a moment it looked like humanity would finally break. Then a sudden ripple of defiance cut across the chaos. The humans were not retreating. They were advancing. Admiral Reyes stood on the command deck of the flagship Iron Resolve, eyes burning with both exhaustion and fire. Around him, screens showed hundreds of alien ships pressing closer, their weapons carving the night sky into rivers of flame. But amid the horror, he saw something else. Human ships that should have been broken were still moving. Soldiers that should have fallen were still standing. Entire cities that had been ordered to evacuate were sending out signals of resistance. "This is not the end," Reyes said, his voice carrying across the deck. "This is the turning point." Every officer snapped their heads toward him. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't screaming. But the conviction in his words was stronger than any weapon. On the ground below, the tide of battle shifted in ways the alien commanders did not expect. In New Shanghai, armored columns of alien war machines marched through the ruined streets. Civilians had fled hours ago, leaving only rubble and silence. But when the alien vanguard reached the city center, they found resistance waiting. Human militia units emerged from basements, tunnels, and collapsed buildings. Farmers, workers, students, all armed with rifles and homemade explosives, struck with ferocity. The aliens expected fear. They were met with fury. One alien commander barked orders as his unit tried to regroup, but then a sound split the air, the roar of jet engines. 3 battered human aircraft, long thought destroyed, swooped low over the city. Their payloads fell true, blasting apart the alien formation. The militia surged forward, shouting with voices that carried across the ruins. "Stand your ground! Drive them out!" The aliens staggered. For the first time in the war, they looked unsure. At the same time in orbit, the alien flagship Vorkat pressed its advantage. Its cannons rained fire down onto Earth's defenses, shaking the orbital platforms until they burned bright against the black. The alien commander, High Warlord Draxol, sneered as he watched humanity's supposed last defenses crumble. "Finish this," he hissed. "End their illusion of hope." But as the words left his mouth, a new formation appeared on his sensors. Human ships, dozens of them, rising from the far side of the planet. They were damaged, patched together, some nearly falling apart, but they came in formation, weapons blazing. Reyes had sent a signal across every channel. All ships, all squadrons, regroup. No more retreat. No more waiting. Strike now. The battered human fleet answered. Lasers lit the dark. Torpedoes streaked through the void. Fighters darted in and out of alien fire like angry wasps. The aliens outnumbered them 2-1, but the humans fought like they were endless, and for the first time, alien ships began to break. Colonel Sarah Holden led the defense of the Western Front. She stood on a hillside littered with smoke and debris, her uniform torn, her rifle blackened from overuse. Around her, soldiers who had fought without rest for 3 days braced for the next alien wave. But the next wave never came. Instead, alien troops began pulling back. Their formations faltered. Human artillery pounded them as they retreated, leaving behind their dead and wounded. Holden blinked through the haze, her chest heaving. "They're retreating," she whispered, as though saying it too loudly would break the fragile miracle. Her men looked at her in disbelief. For days, the aliens had pressed harder and harder, showing no mercy, no weakness. But now they were pulling away. The turning tide had begun. Still, the victory was far from certain. Draxel snarled as reports of human advances poured in. His claws tore into the arm of his command chair, gouging deep scars into the metal. "Push them back," he roared. "They are nothing. They are insects pretending to be warriors." Yet no matter how many orders he gave, the truth remained. The humans had found something he could not crush. It wasn't technology. It wasn't numbers. It was something else entirely. On board the Iron Resolve, Admiral Reyes stood silently, watching the shifting battle map. Alien fleets faltered. Human ships pushed forward with reckless abandon. Entire sectors of the planet that had seemed lost were flaring with reports of counterattacks. Reyes finally understood what the aliens had failed to grasp. "They thought war would break us," he said softly. "But war has only forged us harder." His officers stood straighter, their fatigue replaced with a fire of their own. Around them, the hum of the ship's systems seemed louder, more alive. "Signal all fleets," Reyes commanded. His eyes narrowed. "The tide has turned. Now we take the fight to them." On Earth, ordinary people became part of the battle. In villages, in cities, in outposts across the globe, humans who had once hidden in fear now struck back. Resistance networks coordinated strikes against alien supply lines. Farmers used their fields as launch sites for rockets. Children carried messages through sewers and tunnels, keeping communication alive where satellites had failed. The aliens had demanded war. Humanity answered with everything it had, and pure fury burned brighter than fear. Above it all, the sky glowed with fire as ships exploded in orbit. The human fleet was still fragile, still outgunned, but its determination carried it forward. For every ship lost, 2 more pressed harder. For every city burned, 10 more rose in defiance. The turning tide was not a single battle. It was everywhere all at once. A storm that the aliens had unleashed, only to realize it could not be controlled. And for the first time since the war began, humanity dared to believe that victory was possible. But Reyes knew the danger was not over. The aliens would not give up so easily. Their pride, their empire demanded total conquest. "This is the beginning," Reyes said, his voice quiet but sharp as steel. "Now comes the hardest fight of all." His eyes locked on the glowing red marker that showed the location of the alien flagship. "The head of the beast," he whispered. "Cut it off, and the rest will fall." The war was far from finished, but the tide had turned. Humanity was no longer on the defensive. Humanity was coming for vengeance. The sky burned red. Earth's horizon was a wall of fire, the atmosphere lit by thousands of explosions as ships clashed above. Alien war engines still pressed hard, their weapons cutting across continents, but something deeper than fear now gripped humanity. They were done defending. They were done retreating. The moment had come to strike back with everything they had, and Admiral Reyes knew the final blow had to fall on the alien flagship. On the Iron Resolve, the crew worked in silence, broken only by the rumble of weapons firing and the steady beat of alarms. Every man and woman knew what was at stake. If the alien flagship survived, the war would drag on until Earth was nothing but ash. If it fell, the invaders would lose their spine. Reyes leaned forward on the command table, his eyes locked on the single red marker in orbit that pulsed like a beating heart. The alien command ship Vorkat, a fortress in space, a monster of steel, the source of the endless orders that drove alien troops forward without mercy. Everything ends with that ship, Reyes said. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned like a man staring into fate. Around him, officers nodded. None of them needed convincing. The order was given. All human ships focus fire on the flagship. On the alien command deck, High Warlord Draxol felt no fear. Not yet. He stood tall, armored in plates that glowed with his people's ancient symbols of conquest, and stared at the battle outside. The humans were wild, reckless, throwing ships and men into fire with no regard for survival. And yet, they were gaining ground. For every alien cruiser that destroyed a human frigate, 2 more human ships surged forward. For every ground division that burned a city, 10 more militias rose up in the ashes. Draxol's claws dug into the railing. This was not war as he understood it. This was chaos. This was fury made flesh, but he would not yield. "Break them," he hissed. "Tear their fleet apart. Show them why we are masters of the stars." His officers obeyed. The Vorkat came alive with fire, its cannons blasting apart human destroyers with single strikes. Its shields glowed, shrugging off the desperate salvos humanity poured into it. Yet still the humans came. Colonel Sarah Holden's ground forces, exhausted and battered, received their orders at dawn. Strike at alien ground relays. Sever the link between the alien fleet and their forward units. Her soldiers had no strength left to give, but they went anyway. They struck alien command posts with stolen weapons and homemade bombs. They jammed communications with whatever signals they could broadcast. Holden herself led a charge into a relay hub in the ruins of old Berlin. Her rifle shook in her hands as she fired down the hall, alien bodies falling as she pushed deeper. Grenades blasted against the walls, smoke filled the corridors, but she kept moving. She reached the core chamber. With a roar, she planted the charges. The explosion tore the building apart. Above them, alien forces lost coordination. Confusion spread like a disease, and in that confusion, humanity found its chance. The human fleet surged toward the flagship, shields failing, hulls cracking, but still they came. Reyes ordered every remaining torpedo fired. He ordered every railgun to overheat if it had to. He ordered fighters to ram enemy ships if no weapons were left. "This is it," he told his crew. "If we fall striking at the heart." The battle became madness. Human ships tore through alien lines, ignoring everything but the path to the Vorkat. Fighters screamed in tight formations, hammering the flagship's shields until they glowed white-hot. Battleships unleashed salvos so fierce that their own hulls cracked from the recoil. At last, a crack appeared in the alien shields. "Concentrate fire," Reyes shouted. His voice shook the deck. "Break them open." Every gun answered. Beams of light, streaks of fire, waves of missiles, all converged on one point. The alien flagship shuddered, its shields flickering, then finally collapsing. The monster was vulnerable. Draxol felt the shift at once. The tremor of impact rippled through the Vorkat. His officers shouted warnings, reports of failing shields, of fires spreading through the lower decks. "Hold the line," Draxol bellowed. "This ship will not fall to primitives." But even as he roared, his screens filled with the sight of human ships closing in. Smaller, weaker, burning with damage, but refusing to break. For the first time in his life, Draxol tasted something he had never known. Fear. The Iron Resolve dove in close. Its hull groaned, armor plates breaking away under alien fire, but Reyes did not flinch. He had one final card to play, a weapon humanity had held back. A prototype, dangerous even to its users. The Valkyrie Lance, a beam designed to pierce the core of any ship, even one as massive as the Vorkat. But to use it meant overloading their own systems. Reyes gave the order without hesitation: charge the lance, target their core. In this war, the ship shook as the weapon came online. Lights flickered, consoles burned. The crew braced for impact. The alien flagship turned all weapons on them, determined to destroy them before the lance fired. But Reyes whispered one final command: "Hold steady!" The lance fired. The beam tore across space like a blade of the gods. It cut through the flagship's armor, through its inner decks, through its heart. The Vorkat convulsed, explosions ripping it apart from within. Alien screams filled the comms as the warlord's ship burned brighter than a star. On his command deck, Draxal clutched the railing as fire consumed his throne. He saw the human's fury unleashed in its purest form, and at last he understood. They were never prey, he whispered as the flames closed around him. They were predators, the Vorkat exploded. A shockwave spread across the battlefield, hurling ships apart, lighting the skies with fire. The alien fleet froze. Without their leader, without their flagship, their unity shattered. Some ships tried to fight on. Most broke and fled. And for the first time, the sky was clear of the invaders. On Earth, cheers erupted across every city, every bunker, every trench. The impossible had happened. Humanity had not only survived, it had won. Colonel Holden stood on the smoking ruins of Berlin's relay hub, her face streaked with dirt and blood, but her eyes bright with victory. Around her, soldiers embraced, shouting with voices hoarse from battle. "They're running," she said, barely believing her own words. "They're actually running." On the Iron Resolve, the crew erupted into cheers, some collapsing from exhaustion, others pounding their fists against the consoles. But Reyes did not smile. He stood in silence, watching the last alien ships vanish into the void. He knew this was not the end. They would return. Empires did not die in a day. But now, humanity had shown the truth. They had answered the demand for war. And their fury had shaken the stars. Hours later, messages spread across the planet. From burned-out towns to surviving cities, people whispered the same words: "We are still here. We will never bow. We are human." And as the ashes settled, Earth stood united, not broken. The war had scarred them. But the fury of humanity had saved them.